I'm Sarah with Designs by Sarah J, and I am so excited to be bringing you the 2020 Quiltmania Mystery Quilt that I'm calling Swivel. Like many of you, I followed along with the Quiltmania mystery projects over the years, and in the last couple of years I had an idea for a quilt, but I needed the perfect fabrics for it. In early 2019, I approached Marcus Fabrics and shared my idea with them. And I also shared that I thought some of Judy Rothamel's classic 1800s prints would be the perfect fabric if I could recolor them in a more updated palette. Luckily, Marcus and Judy agreed, and so we'll be using my full circle fabrics to make this quilt. I'd love to share a few of them with you now. The quilt will include a variety of blues and classic shirtings. There's plenty of green, gold, and more shirtings as well. I also added a spark of purple and, yes, a few more shirting backgrounds. And then finally the quilt will include some reds and great double pinks. So you can see the quilt will have a full range of color. And then of course a mystery fabric. If you followed along with Quiltmania, you know there's always one fabric exclusive to participating shops that ties the whole quilt together. We've designed a knockout print for you. It truly does tie the quilt together, and it's used both in setting blocks and in border blocks, so you'll really need it to make your quilt shine. Be sure to sign up with a participating shop so you get this mystery fabric, as it's exclusive and only available to the shops in the program. So let's talk about how to make the quilt. This is suitable for a variety of methods. I've set it up so you can hand piece, and there are acrylic templates available through Paper Pieces or through your participating shop that have marking holes, so that you can draw out your shapes if you prefer to hand piece. There's also a set available with 3/8 inch seams, so if you prefer English paper piecing, we've got you covered on that. And finally, if you love to rotary cut and machine piece, I'll be showing you how to make this quilt that way in the videos. The first blocks are easy. You can definitely rotary cut and machine piece. Along the way, we'll cover some Y seams or set-in seams, and I'll share all my tricks for you on how you can machine piece this quilt if that's your preference. And also, if you like to combine techniques, you can certainly do that. Lots of times I combine blocks that are English paper pieced or machine pieced to do the best method for a particular shape. So don't be afraid to try lots of new things in this quilt. I've also partnered with Aurifil Thread for the perfect thread set that you can use to make your quilt. This is a set of small spools available at your participating shop or on my own website, designsbysarahj.com, if you can't find it locally. The set includes 10 small spools of thread. In it, I've included my two favorite shades of gray, which I'll be using for piecing. It's color 2615 and color 2625. Then there are several other colors and weights, and along the way I'll talk about how you can use some thread accents in both this quilt and other quilts if you like to do thread work. So be sure to look for the full circle Aurifil thread set to help with your piecing. Other tools that you'll want to have on hand as we get ready to start in with block 1, a good rotary cutter to use with the acrylic templates. This is the Grace True Cut 45mm cutter, and I'll be showing you ways to use this cutter and some other rulers along the way. And then I also recommend a rotating mat. This is the Olfa rotating mat. As you can see, it's square, but it does rotate. If you have a rotating mat, you can turn your template as you need to cut around the sides rather than turning your fabric, and that will help you maintain alignment. So we're going to make 2 blocks this month. Let me give you a sneak peek. This is block 1, and I'll be sharing details of how to cut this out and piece it. And then block 2 is the same block, just with different fabrics, and again we'll be sharing construction techniques. So go gather all your tools, gather your fabric, and let's get ready to cut and sew. we're making 2 blocks, and these blocks focus on the blue fabrics in my full circle line. And if you signed up with a participating shop, you should have received yardage of these 6 prints. Take a moment to identify which is fabric 1 through fabric 6 so that you can cut the right pieces each time. And know that you will have received more fabric than you'll use in these first blocks this month. It's because these fabrics repeat again along the way. With each installment, you'll receive a new set of fabric, so there is fabric coming every month. And with every installment, cut what you need for those blocks, then set the fabric aside so that you have it for the future. You'll see these fabrics reappear again down the road in setting blocks, in alternate blocks, and in some piece border blocks. So make sure that you save it so you can use it when you need it. Now, if you purchase the acrylic templates, the first thing I recommend you do is peel off the paper backing and then add some kind of adhesive grip to them. My favorite is the True Grip from Grace Quilting. If you can't find these locally or at your participating shop, they're available on my website. And with them, you get a sheet of adhesive grips that you just peel off, and then you place them on the back of one of your templates. Make sure to put it on the back, so if you can read the words, then it will go on the back side. Just put it on and it's ready to go. These will help your templates grip the fabric as you're cutting around these shapes so that your shapes are nice and precise. Go ahead and get ready with fabric 1, and I'll show you how I cut that out and then talk about how to piece this block. You can piece this one in wedges so that there are no set-in seams or Y-seams. So this block's a great introduction to the overall piecing for the quilt, and I'm going to show you just how to make it go together so that you have nice sharp points and smooth seam. Okay, we're ready to start cutting our fabric for block 1. With fabric 1, we're going to be cutting template A2. And because this triangle has 2 different sizes of sides, it does matter how this template is positioned on the fabric. You're going to want to lay it right side up where you can read the words. And then this is a fabric that has a repeating almost directional element. So if you care about lining up things that are in rows, you might want to fussy cut this shape. And so I'm positioning one of the circles right at the corner on the 2 solid lines, which are my sewing lines for this shape. And I'm going to get started with the cut here. And these templates have little notches to help with precision alignment. So I'm going to make all the cuts, and then if I can get that fabric out of the way, I can now take advantage of my rotating mat to cut the other sides without disrupting how the fabric's laying under the template, so I get a nice clean shape. And so I'll make these last 2 cuts, knock this out of the way, and there you go. You can see how the 2 stitching lines are lined up right with that circle, and then they continue across. So if you want to have a fussy cut element to this, this is how I would do fabric 1 with template A2. And then go ahead and cut the rest of your shapes. You'll end up with 4 triangles like this, and proceed through the pattern, cutting out the rest of the triangles, and then we'll talk about how you piece these into wedges. So I wanted to tune back into the video and talk to you a little bit about shape A4. This is the triangle that frames the outer corner of the blocks. And if you look at the magazine illustration, you'll see that it appears both in its face up side, and it also appears in the reverse. And so this is the only fabric in the block that I recommend you layer so that you can cut both the A4 shape and the A4 reverse shape at the same time. So I folded my fabric in half once, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold it again, and that way I'll be cutting all 4 of my A4 and A4 reverse shapes at one time. So I've layered this, and because I'm going to need to cut the other set of 4 on this piece, the first thing I'm going to do, just to make this fabric easy to manipulate, is cut it off so I don't have a lot laying over the side of the mat. I've aligned it now, and I'm going to start cutting, and I'm going to cut this outer edge first, and now I can pull that fabric away and go ahead and finish cutting the rest of this triangle. I'll cut my alignment notches on the ends, and then cut this long seam, and I'm holding firmly so the template doesn't wobble, and come down here and cut the other alignment set. So now I've got 2 each of A4 and A4 reversed, and I'll go ahead and I'll cut the other set of fabric with that shape again, lining this up, and then I'll get all 8 of the triangles that I need for the corners with easy cutting. And we'll come in and do the notches, and do the notches down here. And now I've got 4 more of the triangles that I'm ready to sew. So continue on cutting the rest of your shapes. I just wanted to give you that tip for the A4 shape, and we'll be back soon to talk about assembly. Okay, we're back and we've cut out all of the shapes for block 1, and what I like to do first is a double check to make sure I've cut out everything properly and they're all aligning the right way, is I lay out all my pieces on a design board that I can pick up and take to my sewing machine, and I take a look at how I'm going to do assembly. Now for this block I'm going to be machine piecing. I want to use an accurate 1/4 inch seam. Test your seam allowance first if you're not sure that you have an accurate 1/4 inch seam, because that's very important. With all of the number of shapes in this block, you want accuracy. And if I didn't have a pattern to go by, my instinct might be to start piecing this pinwheel together, because that's a very familiar shape, and it would be logical to sew these 2 triangles together and then sew to here. But you do not want to do that for this block. I tried that, and that makes you have to deal with a set-in seam or a Y seam right off the bat, and we don't want to do that if we can avoid it. So instead, if you construct this block in wedges, and by wedges I mean piece this set of triangles outward from the center so that you end up with a long skinny triangle, and you'll sew this one together, and then you'll sew this set of triangles together, again a long skinny set of triangles. Make sure that you send the seam allowance in one set all in one direction, either piecing all the seam allowance all toward the outer edge or all toward the inner, and do the reverse on the other one, and then your seams are going to nest together really nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and sew my wedges together, and then I'll come back and show you how we're going to put that all together into a really nice block, and you'll be done with the first block for installment 1. So I'm back now, and I have stitched together the long wedges of triangles like I mentioned, and I added in the A4 and the A4 reverse. So I've got 2 stacks of triangles that I'm ready to piece together into squares. And also, as I mentioned, I pressed all of the seams in one direction on one set of triangles, and all of the seams the other direction on the opposite set. So one all going down, one all going up, and that's going to make my seams nest together perfectly. So what I would do now is layer 1 of each triangle pair together, and you can really see here how the edges on the templates, the little corner alignment cuts, help line these up. And then one of my favorite tools, sewing notions to use, are clover fork pins. And they help me get really sharp points. So I'm going to pin at the intersection, and you can see here that there's an X where the 2 seam lines come together. So I'm going to pin through both of those X intersections, find the alignment on the other side, and I'm going to push that pin straight through and push it all the way till the glass head of the pin is up against where the X's intersect. And then I'm going to come in with the fork pin, and I'm going to push the tines of that through on either side of the X. And that's going to help the X stay perfectly aligned. If I were to weave the pin in and out through it, it would distort a little bit. I can do that down here where I'm not lining anything up. But anywhere that seams are aligning and coming together, I'm going to want to drop a pin through the X and through the line on the other side, the stitch line, pull it all the way through, use a fork pin, and just anchor that so that I'll have a nice sharp point when I stitch this. I'm a person that likes to pin, so for me it's much easier to have a few pins in place and stitch It's worth it to me to take the time to pin, and then I'll get a nice smooth seam, accurate seam without either of the pieces shifting. Better for me to do that than to have to rip. So I'll pin all 4 of my triangle pairs, sew them, and then we'll be back to talk about the final assembly of the block. Okay, we've stitched the triangle wedges together to make squares, and be sure when you press these, you press them all in the same direction. I chose to always press toward this blue. It's going to make the seams line up much neater when I go to piece the 2 squares together if those seams, the long triangular seam there, is going in the opposite direction. So just like before, I am going to find where those 2 seam lines come together. I'm going to drop a pin through it. Then I'm going to get my fork pin and go in on either side of that just to hold everything nicely in place. And same with the intersection up here. And certainly this is a block because of all the pieces. If you are more comfortable doing seams open, you can certainly do that. People always have their own preference on how to press, and I think you should do what works best for you. So if you like seams open, then certainly go ahead and do that. And we have one point here where the seam has an intersection. There's 2 seams that come together, and so I'll do the pin through and fork pin again so that this makes a nice flat intersection. So do this with both of the square pairs, sew this together, and then we're ready to assemble the block. Once you've got these 2 sewn, you'll have the long rectangular units, and you will be ready then to have your final pieced block. So this is block 1. We repeat this exact process with the different fabrics that are outlined in the pattern to create block 2. And this will be all the sewing that you'll do for this month. Be sure to save your fabrics as I mentioned, because you are going to need them again. And I'll wrap up here with just a couple of things to know, and we'll be ready to come back and see you with installment 2. We have wrapped up installment 1 on the 2020 Quiltmania Mystery Quilt Swivel. Just to recap, you should have 2 blocks. They measure 12.5 inches unfinished. When they go into the quilt, they'll be 12 inches finished. One will look like this, showcasing a lot of the great blues in the full circle line. The second block looks like this. And as you can see, we've started to pick up a little bit of the greens and golds that are in the line, and by the end we'll have the full rainbow covered in this quilt. As I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, this shape A2 is a great opportunity to fussy cut that fun print, so that's what it would look like should you choose to do that. You're welcome to use any technique you like, as I explained. I'm happy to answer questions about any of your preferred methods, so feel free to reach out to me on social media. I'm on Instagram at sjmax105, and then you can contact me via my website, which is designsbysarahj.com, and the Sarah has an H. I'm here to answer your questions. I want this to be a fun, exciting journey for you where you hopefully learn some new skills and by the end have a quilt that you just love. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!